Questions of much graver and universal interest occupy our minds today.
Hello, my name is Lieutenant Eric Schein. I'm a graduate of the United States Merchant Marine Academy at Kings Point in New York. I graduated in 1991. In 2001, I was a lieutenant in the United States Navy, serving on special duty in the United States Merchant Marine, when the Coast Guard brought charges against me and started to investigate me and actually brought the charges against me on March 6th of 2003. I was up for promotion in 2003 to Lieutenant Commander when the Coast Guard brought the charges against me. This testimony is to the Chief of Naval Operations, the Admiral, Chief of Staff, and it is about what is going on with the Coast Guard that I hope you are not aware of, and that this will bring the matters to your attention and that you will investigate and correct these matters, not just going on with me as a valid naval officer, but what the Coast Guard is up to behind the scenes that you may not be aware of. I understand with the close proximity of Admiral Allen and others to yourself that sometimes the word of what is going on behind the scenes may not make it to you. The Coast Guard is setting up admiralty or military courts using the Administrative Procedure Act as administered by the Coast Guard, a now self-declared special branch of military, using the Uniform Code of Military Justice and uniformed officers, JAG officers, Judge Advocate General, Coast Guard officers and attorneys, members of the bar, as Coast Guard JAG officers, to prosecute American civilians within these Admiralty drumhead courts where they have little chance of vindicating themselves against any charges. The presumption of innocence, which is constitutional, has been thrown out the door. The presumption of innocence that has been incorporated into the Uniform Code of Military Justice has been thrown out the door. The Coast Guard is now under the presumption that anyone that it charges is guilty and will set out to actually seize records without warrant, without judicial notice, and not to this Admiralty court, but proper judicial notice to an Article III court, and also seize records and falsify records, email the United States Navy and report upon naval officers via the Coast Guard chain of command and file complaints, whether backdoor or formal complaints, with the Navy, that individuals such as myself, and we have documentary evidence of this, showing that individuals or declaring or claiming that individuals like myself have a quote-unquote problem with authority. The only problem with authority that I have is that the Coast Guard is not supposed to be pulling myself as a naval officer within these proceedings. These proceedings are also being treated as a one-size-fits-all admiralty or military court being used upon civilians, to where able-bodied seamen, deckhands, qualified members of the engineering department, all unlicensed personnel on board a vessel, are thrown into the same mixed bag with licensed officers, deep sea engineers, mates, ship's captains, and also intercoastal and intracoastal, to where tugboat and ferry boat and other vessels, smaller vessels, limited tonnage and limited horsepower, are all being treated the same way under these admiralty courts. And these are military courts. The Coast Guard used to be a civil service agency. It supposedly still is, but it is now declaring itself to be a special branch of military within the Department of Homeland Security. I think the Naval Intelligence needs to look into this more closely and what is going on, because I believe that there is a great deal that the Chief of Naval Operations is not aware of, or is not being made aware of, involving not just deep water and integrated Coast Guard systems, but the Coast Guard itself as an extension of the United States Navy right now, and laying claim to the Uniform Code of Military Justice, Title 10, military law, and taking it from DOD, Department of Defense, that it was written for and moving it into the Department of Homeland Security. The reason the Coast Guard, and there is congressional testimony on this from the Coast Guard itself in 1946 and 1947, where the Coast Guard makes it very clear that although it is an agency that is organized along military lines, just like a police force, to where they have sergeants and lieutenants and a chain of command and uniforms and guns, they are not a branch of military. They are now acting as a branch of military, declaring themselves to be a branch of military within Homeland Security and moving the Uniform Code of Military Justice Title 10 military law from DOD, where it's supposed to be, into the Department of Homeland Security. And I asked the Chief of Naval Operations to look into this and many other issues and allow me to brief you and your offices about what is going on with the Coast Guard and what a grave threat it poses to the long and storied history of the United States Navy and even the U.S. Coast Guard to a large extent. The use of these admiralty courts has been attempted not only beginning in World War I when the Coast Guard was formed, but in every war that we have had, they have come up with and tried to impose these admiralty or military courts to where an individual, a civilian, and the only reason I am familiar with what is going on and the grave threat that it poses is because of my graduation from Kings Point, the United States Merchant Marine Academy, and my training from Naval Sciences, not only in the United States Merchant Marine itself, but also the Merchant Marine Act of 1936 and the foundational acts of Congress that instituted Kings Point and the United States Merchant Marine and Special Service, such as myself, and our role with the United States Navy, not only as a liaison and or the eyes and ears of the U.S. Navy in a time of declared war by Congress, but also in times of national emergency or issues like this where we have the war on terror going on. The Coast Guard has overstepped its bounds and is stepping directly into, and I'm not sure if you're aware of this or not, and I hope that you are not, because what the Coast Guard is doing is extremely unconstitutional. They have people placed throughout various positions and committees, congressional and senatorial, and there are individuals even within the GAO. There's a director, I can't think of his name right now, who is heading the investigation into the administrative law court system of the Coast Guard, and he believes that posse comitatus does not include or incorporate the U.S. Navy and or the Coast Guard, that it is okay for a branch of military to use its assets, its resources, including a military court, and to target civilians, American civilians here in the United States, which I hope you realize is not good for the nation. It is not good for the rule of law. It is not good for the history and the position of the United States Navy and or the U.S. Coast Guard. And taking military law and moving it into Homeland Security is extremely dangerous and a move in a direction that we should not be headed in. And I ask that you look into not just these issues, but there are other issues involving Tempest as well. And I know that you are already deep involved in an investigation or deeply involved in an investigation in this regard. But I think that there are other issues, not only about the federal contracting issues of Tempest and how certain federal contractors may have carried this out so that they could cure or fix or get paid to fix a problem that they knew about and could have been averted on the installation of these of the Tempest systems or systems incorporating or tangential to Tempest, whether it be the cabling issues or other issues. But I believe that there are other issues there where this was carried out as a breach of national security, an intentional breach of personnel, not just by integrated Coast Guard systems, by individuals within the Coast Guard. And I ask that you take a serious look not only at the regional exam centers and how they're being set up, how you have a branch of military now in the Coast Guard, a self-declared or otherwise special branch of military that somehow believes that it can carry on police law enforcement, not only of environmental laws like the EPA, 33 and 46 CFR, but can step into not just labor disputes, but can get into and pull individuals out of Article 3 judicial branch proceedings and step upon them and then carry out the proceedings here. If you go into not just the administrative law court system, but the cases involving myself, and investigate the amount of money and time and personnel that have been spent on silencing me about what is going on involving specifically the U.S. Coast Guard, I believe that there is an issue here of not only civil defense, but national security that needs a much closer look by the Navy and your staff as to a breach of national security. And I ask that you take this seriously. I have gone to great lengths in not only trying to survive the attacks for the last 5 years brought against me by the Coast Guard. It has been prosecuting me for the last 5 years since March 6th of 2003. Many of the individuals involved, like the administrative law judge Brzezinski, is not only a former lieutenant commander in the Coast Guard who is sitting on the case as a quote-unquote administrative law judge. The prosecutor is a JAG officer in the Coast Guard who was the citing officer, the investigating officer, and has now become, he was not only the complainant, and the Coast Guard was the complainant within its own court, but the citing officer and or investigating officer was sent away to JAG and law school for 3 or 4 years, comes back, takes over the case as the prosecutor when it's moved to legal. And I know that the United States Navy would not carry on in this type of behavior, and I'm asking that the proper counsel be brought in to contest this as an issue of not only separation of powers, but separation of duty, because the Coast Guard should not be prosecuting first and foremost. They're alleging that I am a civilian, which is improper for a branch of military to be prosecuting civilians here in the United States within its own court system. They're ignoring and they're bringing up my own naval record and naval issues within this court, but I'm not in the Coast Guard, never been in the Coast Guard. If anyone is going to bring charges against me, it should be the United States Navy and not the Coast Guard. The Coast Guard is doing this to deny me JAG counsel, to deny me the benefits, the pay, legal aid, and more. Within these proceedings, I am and continue to work under 46 USC, I'm trying to believe, the 10302, I believe, is the section, it's shipping articles, which are articles of agreement with the United States. They are stating that I am and continue to act under my federal license, which is tied to my Naval Commission, from within these proceedings, beginning in March 6th of 2003 until the present, now today, in July, the end of July in 2008. And I am, as an individual, an alleged quote-unquote civilian, up against not only a branch of military, but a JAG officer who has been trained and who is a military asset within a military court where the presumption of innocence has been thrown out the door and the presumption of guilt. And because of the situation and the way it is set up, all administrative courts, including courts carried out under from the Uniform Code of Military Justice or military law, an individual is presumed innocent. They do not lose rank or pay or grade. They get legal counsel, their own JAG officer, to protect and defend them within any such proceedings. But what's happened now is that the Coast Guard is using these as counter-prosecutorial, retaliatory proceedings to where they are beaching individuals without cause, without warrant, without due process for 5 to 10 years or more on even simple issues. If there's an individual, and much of this gets into federal contracting, much like what has been going on with Halliburton and KBR and other federal contractors in Iraq, the very same thing is going on in programs that are tangential to and supportive of the United States Navy and its mission, whether it be Military Sea Lift Command, Naval Fleet Auxiliary Force, TRANSCOM, Transportation Command, the various unions, labor unions, whether it be master mates and pilots, Marine Engineers Beneficial Association, American Maritime Officers, SIU, the Seamen's International Union, and many of the shipyards, shipbuilders, ship operators, many who have moved overseas. And you've probably seen not only what has happened to American President Lines, but also CSX, what is in the works right now, to sell it off to the Children's Investment Fund, which is an investment fund that is owned and controlled by foreign interests. This is not a good thing. One of the things about the U.S. Navy, it is there to protect our international rights of way and our American flag federal and international fleet, which we have little of today because of what is going on. And the very same attacks, many of which have been carried out by and through the Coast Guard against American flag shipping, are now targeting intercoastal and intracoastal shipping, limited tonnage captains and engineers. We've seen the recent events not only in the Mississippi with the spill of 400,000 gallons of oil, fuel oil, but also the incident with the Costco Busan. There are matters that are tied to that, including the Costco Busan, where there was a German crew on board this vessel before it was turned over to a relatively inexperienced Chinese crew who took the vessel from Chinese waters here into the United States, where it ran into eventually with a pilot on board, of course, the San Francisco Bay Bridge. Those issues are not getting a proper look at, which need to be looked at by naval intelligence and your offices, in addition to the vessel that ran into the barge in the Mississippi was a vessel carrying biodiesel to Germany, and ignoring the past, not only World War I and World War II, and past history about German unification, the individuals who like to embroil us in unnecessary wars to sell weapons cannot be discounted. There are individuals here within our own country who are acting not in the best interest of the American people, of the American Republic, of the U.S. Constitution, and the rule of law. And things need to be looked at much closer by naval intelligence. And I hope and I pray that many of these matters are not and have not been approved upon by the U.S. Navy and or the Admiral Mullen as the and many of these other issues need to be looked at, not only the administrative law court system, but many of these issues are preparation for war. And I don't mean being always prepared just in case or in the eventuality of war, but to where we are being prepared for a planned war. And it is not a planned war that we are intended to win, which goes to many of the issues of Tempest. What I was trying to mention about Admiral Mullen was, as the chair of the Joint Chiefs now, and also yourself as the Chief of Staff for Naval Operations, I know you have close ties to Admiral Mullen. These issues, I do not believe, are getting serious consideration from the Navy itself, and that the Coast Guard is set to now move many of its personnel into and throughout the other branches of the military. And some of the issues there that need to be considered is that the Coast Guard Academy and many of its officers and rank and file are not vetted to the same extent and through the same practices that West Point or Annapolis or the Air Force Academy or Kings Point are, or vetted through the Defense Investigative Services. And I know there are moves to change that now, even within Congress, but you have to realize that you have an entire group of 40,000 or more personnel who are set to move into and start to work closely with other services that I believe will have a grave effect on the operations of the other branches of the military. And I think that to a large extent the Coast Guard needs to be sequestered, returned to a civil service agency that operates full-time under the Administrative Procedure Act for its civil service employees in uniform or out, and that when it comes under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, it does it under written orders coming from the Navy, whether it's as a full attachment or detachment as an agency or branch of government, to do so under direct authority and control of the U.S. Navy. One of the issues within Department of Homeland Security right now is that the Coast Guard does not have a secretary other than the Secretary of Homeland Security, but the Secretary or the Admiral Allen believes, or that they are putting out to a large extent, that Admiral Allen is on par with the chair of the Joint Chiefs, and that they are constructing a mirror image within Homeland Security to mirror the Department of Defense, and the Admiral Allen as the first quote-unquote chief of staff of the Coast Guard would be the first branch within Homeland Security to secure this position. And even now they are throwing out the creation of a position of a Secretary of the Coast Guard, which is somewhat problematic, because effectively what is going on is the creation of a new Department of Defense within Homeland Security, or as Homeland Security, and now the Department of Defense is being converted into a Department of War or Department of Aggression. And I think that these issues need to be seriously looked at, and I'm not sure, coming from a position as a lieutenant who was up for promotion to lieutenant commander, and understanding them from my position as a graduate of Kings Point, and working and serving throughout the United States and abroad, including not only San Diego, Transcom, NFAF, MSC, also serving at Pearl on subs over there, serving at the sub base down in San Diego, serving and working as a civil service employee for many of the commands, also working as a naval officer within many of these commands, and seeing things from not only a civil service side, but also a trained federal officer and naval officer position. I have a certain perspective and vantage point that may not be making it back to the higher command in the Chief of Staff of Naval Operations, or Chief of Naval Operations, the Admiral. And I ask that these matters be given due consideration, and that the Navy look into the cases with the Coast Guard where it has actually brought charges against me and has tried to carry out a medical board, a special or summary or general court-martial of me as a civilian through a Coast Guard military tribunal. And I would hope that the Navy not only would not stand for this, but that the U.S. Navy on notice would take the steps necessary to stop this in its tracks and not allow it to grow, and that this is not being passed on or approved on by the higher command, by the Chief of Staff and or the Chair of the Joint Chiefs. These are not the type of activities that make us more secure. These are the type of activities that make us less secure. The amount of money and personnel, the court system itself, how it was carried out, even using and mandating to some extent and getting to the individuals within Congress, both the House and the Senate, to correct these matters so that any type of proceeding like this is carried out by civil service employees for civil service employees, or some other system. There was supposed to be a system in effect called the Licensed Personnel Board. These federal contractors, the shipping companies, and many of the unions are paid to provide this system. They are now using the Coast Guard's Admiralty or military court system to replace this, so that A, they don't have to pay, they don't have to provide it, even though they're paid to provide it, and so that rather than being remedial and administrative to where minor grievances can be heard and resolved, they are using these proceedings being carried on by a special branch of military in a counter-prosecutorial fashion to rob individuals of life, liberty, property that is, again, unconstitutional. And I ask, I apologize for having this video as unscripted, but hopefully there is enough information in it I believe one of the case numbers is 030166. I will send documents with this videotape to your offices in regards to much of what is going on. There are also issues of this, one of the ALJs not only being a lieutenant commander in the Coast Guard, but he has been involved in other issues involving 9/11 and the trust funds set up for recompense to the families who were injured in 9/11, to where a special master who was supposed to be appointed by the judiciary, as special masters are, was appointed by the executive branch, Kenneth Feinberg, and they did as much to keep as much money in the trust fund away from the families so that they could come back in later and raid the trust fund. This individual is no good. Some honest and decent people within some form, if they're going to use the Administrative Procedure Act and or the Uniform Code of Military Justice, it needs to be applied properly, or the proper access. One of the reasons the Coast Guard was moved into the Department of Transportation in '65 and the Suits and Admiralty Act was passed was to take away these drumhead or kangaroo courts from the Coast Guard that are recreated in every conflict or every war and restored back to Article 3 of the federal judiciary, where they should reside. Because of the complex issues here, not only of having some people who are naval officers and others who are not, the issues of war or actual declared war by Congress or the authorization to use force, and many other issues, especially using or moving military law into the Department of Homeland Security, these issues need to be looked at more closely by your offices, and I ask that you do that. I apologize for not having any form of command structure to go through in this because of what has happened to the United States Merchant Marine, what has happened to American Flag Service, what has happened even to Kings Point to a large degree, what has happened to the schools that are naval officers as graduates of Kings Point and in the United States Merchant Marine has happened to them in closing many of them down. I ask that you take the time, assign staff to look into this more deeply, and also do a debriefing with me so that I may lay out some of these issues more closely. Thank you, sir.